Thank you for blessing us with the beautiful music. It's good to see the choir seems more full today. You have some reinforcements. Minji and Reverend Chung. That's great. And choir is a blessed ministry of ours. If others you want to share your gift of your voice, please consider joining the choir. And thank you to our praise team too. It was such a blessed, moving experience to have worship with our music. Today is the first Sunday of Lent, and we've begun the season of Lent. Lent is modeled after today's passage of Jesus' time in the wilderness. It's the 40-day period between Ash Wednesday, which was this past Wednesday, until Good Friday. And it follows the 40 days and nights that Jesus spent in the wilderness. So today is a meaningful passage for us. This story of Jesus in the wilderness, it takes place in between two stories. It takes place in between his baptism and then before his public ministry. So it's an important transitional time. The baptism was a glorious experience. Jesus got baptized and the heavens opened up and a voice came from heaven saying, "This is my son, my beloved, in whom I am well pleased." So that was a glorious moment. But right after that, this is what we see. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tested by the devil. The Spirit leads him there. And it was no mere accident. You see, in the Bible, the wilderness, it's not just an inconvenient little obstacle. It's not just a little passage that you just go through as quickly as possible. The wilderness is an important place in the life of faith. In the wilderness, your faith gets tested. Your deepest physical and emotional needs come into conflict with your trust in God. And there, the content and strength of your faith is revealed. So I was supposed to change that sermon title to Faith is Revealed in Tension. Because originally it was Faith is Born in Tension, but I realized that's not entirely true. When your faith gets tested, what happens is your faith is revealed. And faith is revealed not when life is easy, but when it gets tested by the tension between your needs and your trust in God. So I want to reflect on these dynamics of wilderness. What happens in the wilderness? In the wilderness, everything artificial is stripped away. And what remains, what is left, is very raw and real. When Jesus was in the wilderness, everything was stripped away. Food, safety, and a sense of power. Hunger, fear, and power are things we feel with our bodies. The stomach feels hunger. You can feel fear in your bones and in your nervous system when you're truly afraid. And power, it's like sugar. When you have it, it gives your body a tremendous rush. But without it, you feel no energy. We feel these things very concretely in our bodies. But you also see something else. You see Jesus relying on spiritual food. You see him trust God for his safety, even when he's feeling very vulnerable. And you see him worshiping God instead of seeking power for himself. So in this story of the wilderness, you see these multiple dimensions of human existence. We human beings, we are bodily creatures with bodily needs. We need food, we need safety, we need power. but we are also spiritual beings that seek connection with a greater spiritual reality beyond us. Saint Augustine, he recognized this, and he spoke of a deep longing within every human heart for connection with God. This is what he said: "You have made us for yourself, and our heart is restless until it rests in you." We are not only physical creatures trying to survive, we are spiritual creatures seeking communion. But we know all too well that the history of human beings tells another story on the surface. When people are hungry, they unravel. When fear arises, people become very irrational. And when people taste power, they become drunk and intoxicated on it and will do all manner of things. Physical and emotional pressures have a way of overpowering principles and convictions. Under strain, your instinct takes over and overpowers you. These dynamics are exposed most clearly when you are in the wilderness, when everything is stripped down to its most raw essentials. It exposes what truly governs your heart. In the wilderness, Jesus' bodily and emotional needs come under real threat, and his faith, his trust in God is tested. So the question underneath this testing is really this: what will ultimately drive him? Will he be driven by his immediate physical need? Or will he trust God? When push comes to shove, that's the important question we need to ask. Are you driven by your immediate needs or by your deep trust in God? Bodily needs are powerful because they are so immediate. We feel it. Hunger demands your attention. My dad used to always say, "You don't know what true hunger is," right? And that there's nothing as motivating as hunger. And fear is such a powerful emotion. Whether it's, fear of not having money, fear of your health. And we had a district gathering last night, and a lot of people sharing, real fear for our children's safety and well-being. These are real fears. And when we feel afraid, the instinct is to try to control. And power, especially when you felt powerless, it can be intoxicating. That pull of power promises relief for your sense of powerlessness and inability to do anything. In these kinds of situations, the body and the mind want resolution now. We don't want that kind of tension. I think the only tension we like is exciting temporary tension. When we feel this tension, the easiest thing to do is to turn that tension into focus and concentration. Right? The mind begins to concentrate very sharply on your immediate needs. But trusting God, it's not so much about concentration. It's about endurance. It's about faith and holding on to trust, even when you feel the real pangs of your immediate needs. And it means living with this unmet need for an indefinite amount of time. You don't know when those needs will be met. And it means, ultimately, surrender instead of control. Our faith is not revealed when obedience is easy. Faith is revealed when trust in God stands firm under pressure. It gets tested under pressure. And what's really there gets revealed. The tempter invites Jesus to close that gap quickly. Turn stones into bread. Demand and force God's protection now. And seize authority. But Jesus refuses to escape the struggle. He remains in the wilderness and remains anchored in God. He chooses trust over impulse, worship over power, surrender over control. And in that steadfast trust, his faith is revealed as strong. That is why St. Paul talks all the time about the faithfulness of Jesus Christ. On Friday, at our first Winter Friday, we reflected on the first of Jesus' 7 I am statements in the Gospel of John. 7 times he says, I am this. And this time we reflected on I am the bread of life. And this is what he said. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. So we reflected on that bread. And in the Gospel of John, there's always a twofold meaning. There is the literal physical meaning. And Jesus did mean you will never be hungry. Right before he said this, he fed 5,000 people with bread. So he was aware of and he attended to their physical needs. But he also knew that we need more than just our bodies. We are more than that. And so this is what he said when he's tempted. One does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. This quote that Jesus used, it comes from Deuteronomy. The Israelites, way back, they spent 40 years in the wilderness after they escaped Egypt. And before they could enter the promised land, they spent 40 years in the wilderness. And so Jesus' time in the wilderness is modeled after this memory of the Israelites spending there. It's a very central metaphor and formative image in the minds of Israelites, of the Jewish people. Before they could enter the promised land, God said this to the people through Moses. Remember the long way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness in order to humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commandments. He humbled you by letting you hunger, then by feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors were acquainted, in order to make you understand that one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. The really interesting point about this is that God gave them food in the wilderness, in the desert. But what did he give? He gave them manna. It was different from the food that they were acquainted with back in Egypt. This is a new food. And we see here there's a twofold purpose to that. Yes, one was so that their bodies can be fed and they can continue to live. That was the first purpose. But we see a second purpose. It was to teach them that one lives not simply by the bread, but by the grace of God. The Word of God is just as, if not more, important than the physical bread. God wanted to teach them not to trust in the bread, but the one who provides the bread. Trust and worship. That is how you respond to the tension between your immediate needs and your trust in God. When you feel the gap between your immediate needs that you can feel so viscerally in your body and your spiritual trust in God, when there's such a gap and that gap creates tension and pressure, trust and worship. That is what Jesus did, and that is the way that he modeled for us. Trust God with all your heart. Worship God with your whole self. A central feature of Lent is fasting. Many people give up something that they depend on or that they really enjoy. So our family, we had a discussion. Okay, what do you want to give up? What do you want to give up? My kids are giving up devices and screens. And they've been so good. I gave my son an exception this morning for a very special hockey game, right? But it's a once in a lifetime. But there's so much tension there. I mean, that's the kind of tension we embrace, right? But for me, one of the things that I've given up on is going on Apple News on my phone. I don't have social media, but Apple News is like my crack. And especially when I'm feeling a mental tension, I'm struggling with the sermon message, whatever, tension, to escape it, I go on my phone and I swipe left, Apple News, what's the latest headline? I love my news, right? So I decided to give that up for Lent. And several times I've been tempted, but I'm like, okay, let's put that away. Fasting during Lent invites you into the wilderness pattern. It's not to subject yourself to suffering. It's not to punish yourself. But when you undertake a fast, yes, you feel initially that the absence of that need or the thing that you're so used to. But what it's supposed to do is then, when you recognize that, train your attention to turn to God. To shift your focus to God and give that need to God. Fasting creates tension. And then ultimately it starts to reveal what governs you. And so it gives you that space to consciously turn to God. The goal of the wilderness, any wilderness period that you're going through, where there's a gap between that promise and reality. The goal is not to destroy you. It's to reveal things to you, to reveal your heart, and ultimately to reveal God's care over you. In the wilderness, God fed Israel. And in the wilderness, Jesus stood firm. And at the end of the testing, we see that God sent angels to attend to him. God does not abandon people in the wilderness. God meets them there. And that's the ultimate goal of the wilderness, is for you to experience and meet God in a real way. It is in the wilderness that we have our most real and gracious encounters of the loving God. When you feel the strain between what your body or your emotions demand and what faith requires, when you're feeling that tension, don't run away from it. Remain there. Trust and worship. And your faith will be revealed there. The same God who sustained Israel, the God who sustained Jesus, will sustain you as well. Amen.